Ubisoft, THQ's Black Forest, and Sloclap. Our next guests worked at all of these esteemed studios, among others, including The Division, Tell Me Why, Jusant, and also Rematch, who everyone is talking about.
Starting at Ubisoft, I realized that the complexity was over the roof. I still remember everything of that moment, by the way. So sometimes it's just you play the game and you profile specific things. I wouldn't ever recommend to profile everything at once, like GPU, CPU, memory, blah blah blah. After a couple of years at Ubisoft, I was like, okay, AAA industry, it's an ecosystem.
What's the most overlooked part of building a solid UI system in games?
Oh, UI is always overlooked to me. The Last of Us 2, they made like a pinnacle of accessibility in UI, but also the game altogether. I spit on the face of everybody's that has strong belief about how AI is going to replace QA.
So as a game architect, how do you scale a game from being a prototype to a full-on production?
Oh, that's a very interesting question, actually.
And on that note, what do games mean to you?
Oh, existential crisis there. But at the end of the day, it's what you do that matters.
Hey, it's been a while. Or not. If you follow us on Instagram, it certainly has not been a while. If you don't yet, please go and check it out. In case this is your first time, hi, I'm gamedev. I work in games and talk everything game dev. In this series, we invite guests over and learn from their experiences. These guests are experts in their fields, and they help us understand what game dev looks like behind closed doors. And what can I say about our next guest today? All the way from France, he's genuinely one of the coolest and best equipped professionals that I've had the pleasure to work alongside. AAA and indie hardened, whether it's Ubisoft, Don't Nod, THQ's Black Forest, Elyzio, or Sloclap. He's worked through it all. His works include titles like The Division, Jusant, Tell Me Why, Fate to Silence, Destroy All Humans, and Warden's Will. His works and titles have been praised by critics across PC and console platforms. Currently working as a technical director, his technical expertise encompasses development, art, shaders, animation, tools, you name it. He's no jack of all trades, and I say this very seriously, he's the master of all. Finally, we're joined by a very special guest and colleague of mine. We've got Arthur Trouslard. So without further ado, let's dive straight into our chat with him. Et nous sommes ici avec Arthur Trouslard. Arthur, c'est vraiment un privilège d'avoir travaillé avec un professionnel comme vous. Nous vous remercions pour votre temps aujourd'hui et bienvenue chez gamedev.
Thanks. Wow, that's quite a surprise. Yeah, you never stop to amaze me.
So welcome to gamedev. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. I'm Arthur, and I work in the video game industry since 10 plus years. First as a technical artist, and now as a technical director.
So Arthur, you've worked at Ubisoft, you've worked at Don't Nod, THQ's Black Forest, Elyzio, Sloclap. It's a combination of up-and-coming indies alongside out-and-out AAA games. And during this time, you've worked on titles like Jusant, Tell Me Why, Fate to Silence, Destroy All Humans, Division, Warden's Will. There's also Rematch, which is an up to 5v5 football game, and I know I'll definitely be playing that for a very long time. You have a highly diverse skill set in tech art, tools and UI programming, 3D and animation pipelines, game production, game architecture. Where do we even start? Tell us how you got into game dev specifically, and why game dev of all things?
Okay. I don't know, to be honest. Honestly, I have no clue, in a sense that kind of ended up in video game industry out of trial by error. Like, I wasn't a good student, and I never was a good student. And if I believed my teachers, I would have never ended up in the video game industry. And to be honest, at any point, I think I was like dreaming about working in video game industry. The last and only study I've made was in cinema, like VFX in the cinema industry. And even there, I was like average. I was an average, very, very average student. There were that one teacher someday who was teaching us how to make Mail script. So Mail script is a Maya embedded language, Mail, in Maya. So it's a very specific, a language very specific to Maya. And it was like basically the guy was teaching us how to program in Maya to make rigs for animation. So it was very, very specific, like, I don't know, 2-3 weeks courses there throughout the year. And at first, even that, I was very average and I hated it. But at some point, something clicked. And I think that's the moment, like, something clicked. Eventually, I don't know why, I went like full throttle in programming. But it was like weird stuff. So I was basically programming the exercises that we were asked to do. And yeah, I was good at it. And the thing is, well, I was still an average student. So we finished the school. I had my diploma for VFX in cinema. But at this point, I was like having fun programming stuff. So I started programming in Unity back then. But I knew I didn't want it to work in cinema. So I was just like programming random stuff in Maya and making the most random things and tools you could think of. Like I had a script to generate Medusa in Maya. So nobody wants this, but I was having fun making that. Another one was for generating like treadmills for tanks. But it was a pretty good simulation, but nobody wanted that. But anyway, at some point I had like a collection of scripts. And at some point I even swore to someone telling me like, hey, you do some tools and we are looking for technical artists at Ubisoft Annecy. And Annecy is a city in France. So first, I didn't know anything about Annecy. I didn't even knew Ubisoft had a studio at Annecy. And third, I was like, what is a technical artist? But I was like, yes, okay. Just because I thought that if they contact me, it's maybe because I could help. So it's kind of how it started. So I went there with my laptop and all the scripts I've had fun to make. And I was basically explaining what was fun to me when I used to make those tools. And I just started like this. And frankly, I forgot about the question at this point.
You have a highly diverse skill set in tech art, tools and UI programming, 3D and animation pipelines, game production, game architecture. Where do we even start?
Yeah. Oh, that's a very interesting question, actually. So the thing is, when I started as a technical artist, I had no clue about how video game works. Back then, the bare minimum knowledge I had was like hacking games, just to like see how games do functions. Like to see that, oh, actually, when I'm walking in a game, not everything that I see has a collision, but there is kind of a scene I cannot see, and that's the one I can have like physical interaction. But I was like discovering that video games were hiding things. And I started to scratch these things. And starting at Ubisoft, I realized that the complexity was over the roof, and there were many things to discover. First, as a technical artist, and a good thing, it is good because it is overwhelming, but is that a technical artist often gets involved into various topics from animation to UI to VFX. It's a bit of bridges between different roles. And you get to talk with those people. And talking to these people, you you realize even more that, oh, okay, video game is even more complex than I thought. And I think that at this point okay, it's a bit binary to consider it like this, but you kind of have two options. It's either you commit to one field of expertise and you're like, that will be my career. I will be the best animator, 3D artist, you name it. I will try to be the best in that specific field. Or, that's a bit more my taste, I will never stop studying because I want to embrace that kind of complexity. And yeah, that's kind of the path I took at some point. At some point, I often switch companies the moment I realized I was like, people were trying to root me in a specific role. And me, it's often the moment I'm like, actually, I still want to learn and to have a grasp on various things. Not because it's only interesting, but also because like you actually get better by talking with more people, animators, UI artists, sound designers, all of that stuff. It's always easier to make tool for these people if you know there are problems, there are daily problems, there are the tool they use, the challenges they have, not from just one production, but from years, because it's the same tool set that is shared from one company to another sometime. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
You mentioned starting out as a programmer and then moving towards tech art. And you remain deeply familiar with both coding and art. How do you approach bridging both programming and art workflows together, especially as someone who's responsible for bringing them together as a technical director?
So to me, that's where the matter of social skill is super important, because often programmers they know what they want, whichever the programming thing it is. It could be for the animation, it could be for the performances, it could be for anything, but it's rarely touching the visual aspect of things, except if it's engineer side of things. Whereas the art direction is usually the other side of the spectrum. They're like, we have the image, but we don't have the tool to make it then. And often the two can crashes and collides because, well, the arts want complex things and the programmers panic and says, no, because it looks costly. And often being either a tech art or somebody else, what I would consider as a decent technical director would be the person that says, oh, okay, chill first. We're not there to crash or collide or anything. We're trying to reach the great compromise. That compromise being the art's direction is fully satisfied with what he wants, with good tools and tools that do works performance-wise, but also that allows them on the art side to fully commit to the artistic vision. So to me, to some extent, I wouldn't say you can be a technical lead. It's not that you cannot be a technical director without any technical knowledge. At some point you need some. But for that specifically, it's almost only like social skills. Just understanding the needs of two very different teams and finding the right approach for both of them. And technically then providing the right solution.
Speaking of social skills and team collaboration, you're as familiar with AAA and indies as they come. How have your experiences and expectations differed having worked in both? And what are the big mindset shifts involved in these?
It's mostly political, actually. Sam, that's it's a very good question in the sense that after a couple of years at Ubisoft, I was like, okay, AAA industry, it's an ecosystem. Really, like it's a specific language process pipelines. It's an ecosystem and it's fascinating. And to be put in parallel with what I've said before, with my approach of I want to learn more, I was like, okay, now I want to do the exact opposite direction and I want to be in an indie studio that is shipping their first indie game using Unreal Engine 4, because back then I was starting learning Unreal Engine 4. And I was like, okay, that's a radical shift, and let's see how different it is. In my case, because it's very... everything that I'm saying there is to take with some chopsticks, in a sense that I'm just comparing two studios, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of different studios with different stories out there. I'm just comparing my story with two studios, so chopsticks. But it was very interesting to see that it's pretty similar, actually, between the two of them. And I will take one simple example, because to me it really sticks my mind. It's just the knowledge is kind of the same. And I wouldn't break any NDA there, but there are some similarities, at least back then, between engine, the Snowdrop engine from Ubisoft and Unreal Engine 4 back then. But down to some like default textures that were being used. I was like, oh, okay, it's interesting because it's the same default texture, but how is it possible? And I was discovering SIGGRAPH papers. So SIGGRAPH is a very important conference for graphic engineers. And time to time, I was like reading those articles, and there were one of them about like interior parallax mapping, like to fake interiors for buildings, like windows of buildings, to fake interiors instead of modeling them. And that SIGGRAPH papers basically laid out the foundation of that method, but also provided a very small texture. And that texture was the one that I saw in Snowdrop engine, but also up to this day, even in Unreal Engine 5, you have that default texture, which is coming from that SIGGRAPH paper. So it was very interesting to see that even though I was switching company and the scope of a project from big AAA to very, very tiny indie, even if the engines were different, the people making these engines were maybe having the same teachers, or at least were using the same SIGGRAPH papers. The knowledge is basically shared. And that's this day I realized this, like, oh, actually, yes. It's not just as, like, it's a soup of knowledge, which is like kind of a planetary source of knowledge. And I was very like surprised how common that knowledge was. What was very different, though, was the very unique pipelines and process that fully depends on the company. And to some extent, you can eventually realize that most of the chaos that can come in and kicks in production usually come from this, which is another topic, I guess.
You speak of AAA being an ecosystem. Can you please elaborate on that?
Yeah. So as I was like having no knowledge or whatsoever about how do one make a game, I was discovering that ecosystem. And I think the easiest was like maybe my first day at job, like ever. I was like discovering what is a producer, but actually no, because there are different type of producer. There is the producer of the floor, because the production was laid and split between different floors, each of them having a specific task or the accurate words was mandat, kind of a contract, but the word is poor. So I was just at least discovering first the producers. I was like, oh, actually, okay, I understand the needs and the role and how that flow of communication starts, which again is social skills, but also like crucial to that extent. I also realized that gameplay programmers, it can be many different type of gameplay programmers. Some are for AI or for combat, for environment interaction. It's always changing, and sometimes it depends on the company, and sometimes on the project, on the game. One very funny thing to do, for example, and that I'm always doing, is like really being careful when you watch the credits roll of a game, because sometimes you'll like playing, I don't know, the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and you're looking at the credits rolls, and you see that they have probably maybe a floor dedicated for people working solely on the environments, environment interaction programming, all that stuff. So it's also interesting to see that, oh, okay, a video game, no, it's just not art and programming. There's also the production, and the art is just not art, it's concept art, animators, 3D artists. And even 3D artists could be split into various roles. And being a technical artist, again, you get to talk to those people to understand their needs, to understand their needs, be it to make a tool or to see what they can optimize in the workflow. And it's also interesting to see that the tools or the workflow is different between a character artist and an environment artist.
Let's tap a little bit into the technical side now, shall we? You're quite a magician when it comes to building pretty UIs, and UI in itself, it's quite underrated in games. What makes UI programming both challenging and fun, and what's the most overlooked part of building a solid UI system in games?
UI is always overlooked to me. For some reason, it's often like the thing that is treated seriously in the last parts, and there is a big raise in awareness when it comes to accessibility in games these days. Notably, like Naughty Dog with The Last of Us 2, they made like a pinnacle of accessibility in UI, but also the game altogether. And for that, I wish we could actually like take some responsibility regarding this, like to consider accessibility a bit sooner in the game, sooner the best. And also comes the UI with this, because often the UI gets overlooked, and it's pretty common to have like UI being overlooked. So since it's overlooked, and accessibility often is just fitting in the UI, which is also wrong. Like, you don't make accessibility option only for the UI. The whole game should support accessibility, and UI is only one aspect of it, since it's the interface literally between you as a player and the game as, well, a game. So those two topics, UI and accessibility, is kind of not a raising concern to me, but I discovered this topic recently, and I get more and more aware of the flows, often coming from production workflows, and also like trying to come up with some insight about how to take it more seriously and sooner as possible. When it comes, though, to the technical challenge of it, often it's not a technical challenge per se. It's more about the understatement of the complexity of the UI in the first place. Same, because often developers may think that UI is just like an interface between what happens in the game and what's happened on the UI. They often take it lightly and think that it's just UI, but it just needs to reflect what's happening in the game on the UI. So yeah, I can see that later and I can make it pretty easily. Which is not true. especially in replicated game. But often, which example I can come with? But often it's mostly a matter of the chain reaction that happens when things happen in game, and the moment you want that change to be reflected on the UI. It's either you have something which is fully responsive, a bit too much to the point where it becomes a killer for the performances, because yes, UI is costly and can be very costly. Or you come up with a good architecture when it comes to the UI, so you update it at the right moment, not too often, and without any issue. And with some good shaders as well. Because yes, then you also have to struggle a bit with how it renders, and you kind of have to approach. One is based on textures, like manually authored texture. And then you discover that, oh, wait, but the UI, it's just quads, so triangles drawn on the screen. And those quads are, well, rendering textures. But it's tied to a certain DPI. And where this DPI is written in Unreal Engine. So a good thing is, since Unreal Engine 5, they finally made it a parameter in the product settings. But back then, to know the native DPI of Unreal Engine, which was 96, you had to dig in the source code. And it's very funny to see that some games shipped with textures with the wrong DPI, and you could clearly see that because there was some blur between the fonts and the textures. And it's, again, something you can totally overlook, not really think about, or just realize it, but at the very last minute, because, well, nobody took the UI topic very seriously. Or nobody really thought about checking the DPI for the reason about why the textures are blurry in the UI in the game. So some things might look and sound a bit easy, but actually it's kind of an iceberg of complexity. But saying it's super interesting.
You mentioned performance cost, and you've also made incredible advancements on the optimization side of the games that we have worked on together. How do you balance visual fidelity with performance when working with shaders, tools, and rigs, and all of that stuff? How do you balance it all?
That's super interesting. The whole topic of performances versus profiling and profiling is super interesting. It's always a matter of balance. Ideally, you never cut something for the sake of performances. It's only you kind of reassess its importance, and you then balance the weight you virtually allocate to that feature, depending on its importance from a player perspective. So sometimes it's just you play the game and you profile specific things. I wouldn't ever recommend to profile everything at once, like GPU, CPU, memory, blah, blah, blah. It's always messy, and the more things you profile simultaneously, the less relevant those becomes, because those profiling tools, they do have a cost as well. So you playtest the game. If you want to optimize the level, something specific, you make it so you can profile it. And then you're like, okay, I have the CPU. Let's take as an example the CPU cost of 5 minutes playtime. And you're trying to balance things. And it's, again, just a matter of balancing regarding the importance of the feature and the current costs. And then comes a matter of a train of reflections about how can these be optimized. A very simple example. It's a very simple one, but when I used to give lectures to school, it's almost every student project had these issues of you want to make interaction in a game, and you put sphere of collisions everywhere. And you made it so the player has a collision around him, and when he collides, overlap with uninteractable, he interacts or can interact with this. It's fine most of the time. It wouldn't hurt. But if you have a big game with many overlap and moving players, plural, you see all those repeated ticks in the CPU cost of, oh, that is a physics body that moved at this frame, and the frame after it moved again. And every time you moved, it's reassessing the collisions test. And you see this, and you're like, this is definitely too costly. But you cannot cut it because you're like, I still want to interact with things in the game. So you reassess how this feature functioned in the first place. And you're like, okay, we want interactions. The problem is the way it works. We have a sphere that collides with the surroundings. But that is how it's supposed to work. So you still need to find an in-between solution. And often the in-between solution is, do I really need? That's always the question I keep in mind when I'm having that kind of issues. In that case, it's pretty simple. Do I really need to perform these tests of collision every frame? Of course, no. I could even run it maybe not every second, but maybe every 0.2 seconds would be more than enough. And at this moment, do I need to constantly have overlapping actors? I could just check the physics collision scene in the first place without testing overlaps, because disabling overlaps in Unreal, it is also an optimization on its own. And by doing so, you just fix the collision, the performance issues related to that feature. And same, for this, to me, is a good example because it's a feature most game has, not all, but most have. And it's something that is always there, so it definitely has an impact if you optimize it, even if it's half, cutting the cut in half is already excellent. But even if you reduce it by 10-20%, if it's something that runs every time, no matter what, yes, it is important. When it's one big explosion, for example, that occurs in a cinematic, might be interesting, but as a player, if it's something you see only once, it needs to keep the epic fantasy around it. The fact that it's that gigantic explosion at the end of the cinematic occurs only once, it's important. But do I need all the fluffy cosmetic details that I would then only see once? I want to feel that it is impressive. I don't want to be like blinded by all those explosions or like that. So you try to dim down either the Niagara emitters, so the particles systems, or the shaders. You try to make a more isolated optimization on that effect. But you know that it's something that only runs once, so you mostly care about how it does renders. If your gigantic explosion eventually is just a soup of textures, because the memory, the graphic memory is saturated and all the textures are loaded in the least available bitmap, so at the lowest resolution when everything is super, super blurry. Okay, that's cool. You kept your superb explosion, but it's not optimized properly, so you don't benefit from it. So it would have been even better to cut it in the first place rather than keeping it with low resolution texture because it hasn't been optimized. But same, it is every time a unique case. If the texture are blurry, it's because the graphic memory is saturated. So you need to look on the memory usage of the game. If it's the CPU, it's a totally different topic. But it's a superb topic, like optimization. It's really cool, I can promise. Because often people are like, yeah, it's boring and annoying and everything. I don't know, it's like, you're a policeman. You get into a crime scene. Okay, you know who... Okay, no, you don't know who killed the person. Yeah, actually, you're a true policeman. That's super cool.
Man, having seen your optimizations firsthand, one can easily see and feel the enthusiasm that you hold towards improving performance. You also touched upon the topic of cost versus return of any feature developed. So taking the player perspective into account and reassessing how well a game feature actually performs, This is deeply linked with the UX of the game. And as someone who is actively directing games, how do you explore revisions and iterations for the UX? How do you make the team understand these concerns?
Well, for the UX side of things, it depends. Usually it goes super smooth because there is kind of a workflow that lets the UX be changed during production to some extent. Notably, if we talk about UI, normally it shouldn't be too demanding to change how the UI do react to a feature, an aspect of the game. Yeah, you should be able to change this without requiring too much change on the code base. And normally, sometimes it doesn't, because it also happens that sometimes you realize that there is a big flaw or lack in UX in the first place, and you need some gameplay coding changes to support now this new change in UX. It also happens. That I don't have either enough experience or enough examples to say whether or not there is an ideal solution to solve this. Maybe early QA is a good thing, and in that regards, I spit on the face of everybody's that has strong belief about how AI is going to replace QA. This is not true at all. You need human people to assess human user experience and not UI garbage. That is a strong opinion, but I strongly believe that it's the case, and maybe more QA early in production would actually make these things related to UX and accessibility a bit easier. When it comes to how a feature functions, it also can happen. Sometimes it's because features get interlinked. Yes, sometimes you need drastic changes for that. It depends. If you're data-driven, it may help in that regards, because at least you are working on isolated assets, piece of code, let's say. Often it can be a bit easier, but it also greatly depends on the framework you're using, and depending on its complexity and how decoupled things are when it comes to the code. So ideally, it should be possible to make every feature of a game abstract enough so you can just disable and enable them however you want. A very simple example is when I do kill enemies in my game. Today, I don't want to collect experience points, but I want, to plant a seed on the ground, and eventually I can be able to pour some water on them to grow some trees. I don't know. Okay, that is a very drastic change. That first, well, if you do such a drastic change in the game, maybe you should revise, the game design in the first place. So it's a bit of a far-fetched example. But if such thing happen, it's more about, I'm not sure how far you can go into the abstraction of codes to support such drastic changes. I think that at the moment you create a framework for a game, it's for a game. You cannot make something abstract enough so you can support absolutely all the possible changes that may occur during a production. Otherwise, you make an engine. Like some engines are specific enough to already pull you towards a certain direction for a game. You take a TKT, for example. You can ship games using TKT, it supports a lot of stuff. You can do crazy things on TKT, but it's barely used because it's very, very specific. But you can do 3D games using TKT. I saw once.
You've spoken at length about proper processes, prioritization, and practices. So as a game architect, how do you scale a game from being a prototype to a full-on production, and then take it towards completion?
I think it's important to, even though something needs a starting point, you always need to consider that eventually it may become something that will ship in opposition to sometimes you will prototype something and you will just cut it, and that will be the end of it. And it can happen at any point throughout the development. But it also means that, well, the features that that see the light of the day until the end of the game, well, they have that starting point at the very beginning. So you always need to start as simple as possible. If you, I don't know, you make a prototype where you can plant seeds and grow tomatoes, just make this. Don't make anything else. Don't make it so, oh, the tomato can be now a cucumber. Just start as simple as it is, because, well, you test it and you're like, okay, it works. Let's move along with these and move forward with other features. So eventually you will be able to plant seeds, that feature you've made. Now you can pour water, another feature you've made. And now you can crop your tomato and put them in storage, or I don't know. But altogether, you've prepared small features altogether. And then the moment you want to change to be able to also plant cucumber, well, you have your starting point. But if you spend too many time making something very complex at the very beginning, you're just burning yourself out. Same, we can take the example in different directions. If you spend, let's say, 2 months by making the best cropping system ever made, like the best, and you're like, I have the best cropping system. Like I can grow tomatoes, watermelons, you name it. You can make everything, and it's an unbearable complexity, and you know that it's fun. Great, but you've spent 2 months making this. Now you need to make the rest of the game, and you need to make it even to the quality of that feature. Good luck with this, because if eventually you realize that working alongside that super complex feature is not maintainable for yourself, for the size of your team or whatnot, you will have a hard time, and you're likely to scope down the feature in the first place to make it appealing and to be able to make the rest. The first thing is, don't overdo stuff early. Always put the foundation of everything, and then raise the foundation, the house, raise a bit everything all together at once. Eventually, some things will be unnecessary, or maybe 2 features can become one because, well, they are quite simple and they can be merged into a single one. And as you move forward, then you put the necessary complexity when it's required. And often adding a complexity when it's required is fairly easy, at least to implement, because, well, it's a need. Well, okay, let's make it so now I can, I don't know, put some fertilizer when I grow my tomatoes. Oh, well, I had to already have that feature where I can pour water. Let's make it now, I can also inject some fertilizer scoring system, I don't know, to increase growth rate or whatever. But the more you start simple, the more you know which toy feature to use and to improve to start better. And same, the smaller the tool, the more atomic it is, the easier it is to foresee the problem. We can go back to what I've said before with the interaction system. If you know where the interaction system comes from, you know what is the risk of making an interaction system based upon collision overlap test. Whereas if you make it a different feature that every X seconds is checking surrounding objects, it's still something simple that can complete something complex, apparently complex. So it's always better to start simple. And to me, the great counter example to this is the trap. I call that a trap. It's not really a trap, but it can be a trap, at least for beginners. The trap of plugins, like things providing like an absolute framework to make, I don't know, a specific game or whatnot, which comes with different features, but you don't know how they do function in the first place. You may be able to rely on some documentation. That's good. It doesn't mean that you're able to simplify them or to build upon them. So always be super, super careful of the temptation of taking such plugins. I call that plugin specifically because of Unreal Engine 5. But yeah, always be careful about the temptation of plugins. It can definitely help. It can also be a great resource to learn things, to have an example of a complete framework, so multiple isolated features working together. But it doesn't mean that it's fully made the way you want it to function. And sometimes it can be complex to change. But it's actually a great example of when things go wrong and you end up with many different features working together on a game that do work, but you need to simplify, optimize, whatever the reason, you need to make some changes. And where to make those changes? It's hard to tell when everything is super complex, interlinked, and maybe some other colleagues have made them, and maybe they left the company, maybe they are in holidays, maybe they are not available for whichever the reason is, but it is never granted. The only thing that can be granted in any game, any project, any company is the thing you've worked on. That's it. Documentation. You never know whether or not it's up to date or if it's encompassing the specific edge case you're trying to get the documentation about.
This was super elaborate. Thank you so much, Arthur, and I couldn't agree more on so many things that you've listed, like avoiding scope creep, plugins unless necessary, and keeping a shipping first mindset. A lot of viewers will benefit greatly from the experiences that you've shared. And speaking of viewers, let's dive into some questions regarding careers and mentorship. There we go. Let's start with technical art, since you're a technical artist. If someone wants to be a technical artist today, where should they start?
Okay. So first, show that you like technical stuff. It can be anything. The thing is, you can make shaders, you can make bits of gameplay. It can be on Unity, it can be on Unreal. You just need to show that you're capable of first learning things, because things move incredibly fast. New technology, new tools, new engines as well. So you need to prove that you can touch different things. Not all technical artists are making 3D art. Me, myself, I'm a very, very poor artist. Some can make audio stuff, like, I don't know, if you want to make a small prototype where you can play with sound, it is possible. If you want to do this, make it, do it, and show it. But first, show your technical background. Shaders, music, gameplay, anything. And that's the second thing, try to interlink them as well, because technical artists, it's not gameplay programmer, or it's not 3D artist. It's a role that is interlinked between different roles as well. So show that you can have a grasp on different things. Animation plus shader, environments plus programming. Try to mix things. And the more broad it is, especially if you're junior, if you can show that you're comfortable basically with technical stuff. And again, then it's a matter of taste. If you don't know exactly what's your taste, show a broad collection of what you can do, because then you can show that you know technical stuff. It's fine not knowing exactly what you prefer. It's good to show what you can do. So show what you can do. Lastly, even myself, when I started, I was scrolling job interviews, but announcements for jobs, and I was like, junior position. I was seeking for junior position, and you should seek for junior position. But every time it was like 3+ experiences in blah blah, having shipped X amount of games, and I was like, how can a junior can start if they're asked to work in the first place. So I cannot decide not to listen to this and say, if they are looking for a junior, they are looking for a junior, no matter what. So again, it falls back to the thing of show what you can do. If someone says like, okay, that person works in a game, it's a junior, but he haven't made anything besides. But that person has, I don't know, maybe he hasn't made any school, but look at this. He made like 10 different small projects. And just a small project, but he made animation, sound, 3D shaders. He has a GitHub with stuff. That's what you show. And if you are looking for a junior position as a technical artist, show them what you can do. A degree, it's good, it's fine. If you're already in a school seeking for a degree, yes, get it. Commit to that and don't burn it for the sake of anything. But at the end of the day, it's what you do that matter. So be curious, experiments, and show those experiments. Never delete them. Always make it so you can show them.
You touched upon school and education in your previous answer, and a lot of people today stand confused regarding whether they should pursue a degree or pursue an opportunity that pops up midway. What's your take on this?
So yeah, if you are in a school and if you're seeking for a degree and you're hesitating, should you continue or stop for a job, an opportunity or something, strongly suggest you to stick to it, stick to the degree, get it. It's not the most crucial thing ever. The thing is, it's the first step that will follow you for your life. And it can feel minor and you can feel it like it's a burden or whatever the reason is. The thing is, it's more important than you think. And at the end of the day, it's just a couple of years required there, and it will help you for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. An educational degree certainly follows you for life. That is very well said. Our world is evolving right now, and we must uphold fundamentals and commit to completing what we start. On the topic of starting, what tips would you like to share with aspiring game devs about joining the industry today?
I would say never take anything for granted, in a sense that it's very tempting to slip into the pride of working in the video game industry, and it's kind of a privilege as well. And it's very tempting to get into the pride of it, but in the bad way. And I've kind of lost friends because of this, because of their pride taking more presence in their in the interaction we had and with the quality of what they made as colleagues. So you can always keep a part of you that is a student, that is humble, that is willing to learn from whatever is on the internet, but also from your colleague. It is, I think it's for the best. And again, it's very tempting to slip in the either the pride or the fatigue of always having to learn things. But the moment you stop learning is the moment you just you're done. It's not fun. It's not possible. So yeah, I think that's one of the best advice, I think.
As we enter into the professional world, our perspectives evolve, and so do we as humans. Could you pick 2 moments from your career? First, the single most valuable lesson that you've learned as a part of the industry, and number 2, what is the biggest joy that the games industry has provided to you?
The best thing I've learned is I was working at Ubisoft. I still remember everything of that moment, by the way. But I did something, I did a mistake. Like I erased something someone was working on. Literally, I did a big mistake there. And the moment I realized I did that mistake, I was like, oh, shit, I need to go and see the person, apologies, and see what we can do to make this. But I was like terrified by this because I was like, I f***ed up. Like I felt like a piece of crap, and I felt also embarrassed for the person. I went to see the person. I explained everything. It was like super casual and just say me that thing. Tell me, you know what? It's fine. You told me, you explained the thing, so I know what to do. And he said it in French, so I will try to translate it. But it was like, it's working people are the one that do mistakes. And it's just, I never forget this, and I will never forget this. And it's something I said several times to people. When they work, sometimes they do mistakes, because everybody do mistakes, and it's perfectly fine, and you should never be ashamed of making mistakes. And it can happen in some companies or with some weird people. But it's fine to do mistakes. What is important is to fix them. As long as you fix stuff, it's fine. Keep learning. It's good. So yeah, that's that thing. I still remember it to this day. And I owe many things to that person who told me this, because I really like this. And the second thing, the moment of joy is, so that one is a bit more complicated. I've never truly felt happy about releasing a game, as odd as it sounds. I don't even know exactly why. Maybe because I dislike the pride of working in video game and the privilege sentiment that comes with it. Yeah. One example that comes in my mind is... Okay, that was a good moment, actually. And I think, okay. One moment was we were at Gamescom last year to present Warden's Will. And people were coming and playing. And at some point, someone, a German, was like... He was staring at me. But it was his kids playing the game. So I was like, okay, maybe you want to ask a question about the game or something. So, but he was not looking at me the same way he was looking at the other person were looking at me usually. So I came to him and I was like, may I help? And he just asked me like, are you the son of my father's name? And I was like, yes. I was like, oh, okay. So they knew my father. They were just there randomly. And the kids just discussed with my father a couple of hours ago, which is already like pure luck. And my father told him to the kids like, oh yeah, my son. So me, okay, it's a bit convoluted story, but my father told the kids that I was working in video game and that we were having a stand in the Gamescom and he could play the game. So he poked his father to make 2 hours rules to go to Gamescom. They spent the day seeking for us to play the game, and the kids haven't left the stand for 2 or 3 hours or something. And that's the moment I was like, okay, that kid didn't knew me, just heard about it, and he wanted to play, and he was just hooked on it. He was not caring about me at all, and it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. You feel like, I don't know, someone behind the curtain that made something good for someone you don't know. And that's the last time I saw someone playing the game, having great fun with it. But that's it. And it's cool. It's so cool.
That was deeply impactful and beautiful, man. It just takes you back to thinking about how and why we do what we do, right? And on that note, what do games mean to you?
Oh, existential crisis there. I put it aside to the same thing why I do like video games and making video games, in the sense that you're just creating your own universe, and it's kind of a moment where you can create your own set of rules and dictate how things are. It sounds a bit control freak, but it's not. But to me, video games is just this. It's just a group of people agreed to make that thing, that piece of art. Because yes, art. Video games is art. And to me, it's like, every time I'm playing a game, I have that picture of it's everybody having worked on that game. It's like all these peoples, the character artists, the programmers, even the producers or the marketing guy in the background, all of them, even the interns, all those peoples, they held at some point the same pencil to draw the same canvas. And that canvas is the game you're playing right now. And with all the complexity, with all the tools, with all the engines, with all the art, with all the sound, with all of that complexity, what you have at the end is just a game. And the sheer difference between the game you're playing and all it demanded to make it, to me, it's fantastic. Like, it's pure nonsense. And that nonsense to me is pure fantastic. Like, it's crazy good. It's fascinating.
And that concludes it. Thank you so much for joining us today, Arthur. Is there anything that you'd like to say to our viewers before we part?
Yeah, one last thing. Keep experiments, have fun, learn, do what you can to keep experiments, and dare. Don't be scared, just dare. It's fine. It will be all good.
And that's curtains for the day. Many, many thanks to Arthur for generously offering his time today, and to you guys, the viewers, for watching all the way through. You can tune into our previous videos from the series and visit us on Instagram to follow us more actively. Speak soon.